The Gulf War showcased modern warfare's evolution, with coalition technology overwhelming Iraqi forces in just 100 hours of ground combat. And here's every major vehicle that fought. Coalition main battle tanks. M1A1, Abrams. The star of Desert Storm, the Abrams dominated Iraqi armor completely. Its thermal sights allowed crews to see through smoke and darkness, engaging T-72s at 2,000+ meters, while Iraqi tanks couldn't even detect them. The 120mm gun destroyed Iraqi tanks with single shots, while their return fire bounced off Abrams armor. Not a single Abrams was destroyed by enemy fire. The psychological effect was devastating. Iraqi tankers realized they were fighting a superior opponent and often abandoned vehicles without fighting. Challenger 1. Britain's main battle tank performed superbly, achieving the longest tank-on-tank kill in history at 5,100 meters. The Challenger's rifled 120mm gun and advanced fire control made it deadly accurate. British tankers destroyed hundreds of Iraqi vehicles without losses. The Challenger proved as capable as the Abrams, vindicating British tank design. AMX-30 B2. France's main battle tank was older than American and British types, but French crews used it effectively. The AMX-30 lacked thermal sights, limiting night operations, but in daylight it performed adequately. French armor supported the Daguet Division's operations on the coalition's left flank. M60A1/A3 Patton, Marine Corps, M60s and Saudi Arabian Pattons engaged Iraqi armor successfully, despite being older designs. The M60 lacked the Abrams advanced systems, but remained effective. Marine M60s destroyed Iraqi tanks in Kuwait City fighting, proving that crew training mattered as much as technology. Khalid/M1. Saudi Arabia operated both British Khalid tanks, modified Challenger, and American M1 Abrams. These equipped Saudi armored brigades that fought Iraqi forces attempting to attack Khafji. Saudi tankers performed well, destroying Iraqi armor and recapturing territory. Coalition infantry fighting vehicles and APCs. M2/M3 Bradley. The Bradley proved far more capable than expected, destroying more Iraqi armored vehicles than the Abrams in some units. The 25mm Bushmaster cannon and Tau missiles devastated Iraqi BMPs and even tanks. Bradley's thermal sights gave them the same night fighting advantage as Abrams. They could engage infantry and vehicles while transporting troops, proving the IFV concept worked. Warrior IFV. Britain's tracked IFV performed excellently, its 30mm cannon shredding Iraqi vehicles. Warriors carried British infantry across Iraq, engaging enemy forces with devastating firepower. The vehicle's reliability in desert conditions impressed crews who'd trained in German forests. M113C. Thousands served with American, Saudi, Egyptian, and other coalition forces. While older and less capable than Bradley's, M113s transported infantry reliably. Their aluminum armor was vulnerable, but they served their purpose in a war where Iraqi resistance collapsed quickly. AMX-10P. France's tracked IFV supported French mechanized infantry. The AMX-10P carried troops and engaged Iraqi positions with its 20mm cannon. It lacked the capability of American and British IFVs, but served adequately in France's sector. LAV-25. The Marine Corps' wheeled light armored vehicle conducted reconnaissance and rapid advances. LAV-25s exploited Iraqi weaknesses, racing ahead to seize objectives. Their 25mm cannon and mobility made them effective scouts and raiders. AIFV. Used by several coalition nations, the AIFV was an upgraded M113 with better armament and protection. Egyptian and other forces operated AIFVs effectively, engaging Iraqi forces throughout the campaign. Coalition artillery. M109 A2/A3 Howitzer, the workhorse of coalition artillery. M109s fired hundreds of thousands of rounds. American, British, and Saudi M109s bombarded Iraqi positions continuously. The self-propelled howitzers could displace rapidly, avoiding Iraqi counter-battery fire. M110A2 Howitzer. The 8-inch M110 reached deep into Iraqi territory, hammering logistics and reserves. Its 203mm shells devastated Iraqi fortifications. American Abatons provided heavy fire support throughout the campaign. MLRS. The multiple launch rocket system earned the Iraqi nickname Steel Rain. MLRS volleys could obliterate entire battalion positions in seconds. The grid square removal system devastated Iraqi artillery and troop concentrations. Iraqis feared MLRS more than any other weapon. AS-90 Braveheart. Britain's new self-propelled howitzer saw its combat debut. The AS-90's automated systems allowed rapid fire and displacement. British artillery overwhelmed Iraqi positions with precision and volume. M198 Howitzer. Towed 155mm howitzers provided fire support for lighter units. While less mobile than self-propelled artillery, M198s were lighter and deployable by helicopter when needed. Coalition attack helicopters. AH-64. The Apache was devastating, destroying hundreds of Iraqi vehicles. Night raids using thermal sights and Hellfire missiles obliterated Iraqi armor while crews slept. The war's first shots were Apache raids on Iraqi radar sites, opening corridors for the air campaign. Apaches operated with impunity. Iraqi air defenses couldn't stop them. AH-1 Cobra. Marine Corps. Cobras supported ground operations with tow missiles and rockets. While older than Apaches, Cobras remained effective tank killers. Marine Cobra pilots racked up significant vehicle kills, supporting the drive into Kuwait. O-58D Kiowa Warrior. These scout helicopters worked with Apaches, finding targets and directing fires. Armed with rockets and machine guns, Kiowas could fight when necessary. Their mast-mounted sights allowed them to peek over terrain without exposing the aircraft. Lynx AH.7. British Army Lynx helicopters fired TOW missiles at Iraqi armor, achieving multiple kills. The Lynx was fast and agile, conducting reconnaissance and anti-tank missions. British crews used speed and tactics to offset the Lynx's smaller size compared to Apaches. Gazelle. French and British Gazelle helicopters conducted reconnaissance and fired hot missiles at Iraqi vehicles. The lightweight helicopters were vulnerable, but useful for scouting and directing fire. Coalition fixed-wing aircraft. F-117 Nighthawk. The stealth fighter struck high-value targets in Baghdad with impunity. F-117s attacked command centers, communications facilities, and leadership targets without losses. Iraqi air defenses never detected them until bombs exploded. The Nighthawk proved stealth technology worked operationally. F-15E Strike Eagle. The dual-role Eagle conducted precision strikes day and night. F-15Es hunted Iraqi Scud launchers and bombed strategic targets. Their Lantern targeting pods allowed precision attacks in any weather. Strike Eagles also maintained air superiority. No Iraqi aircraft dared engage them. F-16 Fighting Falcon. Thousands of sorties by F-16s from multiple nations struck Iraqi targets. The lightweight fighter proved versatile, conducting air-to-air patrols, CD missions, and precision strikes. F-16s destroyed Iraqi aircraft on the ground and in the air. A-10 Thunderbolt II. The Warthog was born for Desert Storm. A-10s massacred Iraqi armor with 30mm cannon fire and Maverick missiles. Flying low and slow, they were vulnerable to ADA but destroyed hundreds of vehicles. Iraqi tankers feared the distinctive twin-engine sound preceding devastation. F/A-18. Hornet. Navy and Marine Hornets flew from carriers and land bases, conducting strikes and fighter sweeps. The multi-role capability allowed F/A-18s to switch missions mid-flight. Hornets struck targets across Iraq and shot down Iraqi aircraft attempting to flee to Iran. F/14. Tomcat. Navy. Tomcats provided fleet air defense and conducted reconnaissance. While no Iraqi aircraft threatened carriers, F/14s maintained cap stations and gathered intelligence with TARPS pods. The Tomcats' long-range missiles kept Iraqi aircraft at bay. F-111. Aardvark. The swing-wing strike aircraft conducted precision attacks with laser-guided bombs. F-111s operated at night, their terrain-following radar allowing low-level penetration. They achieved the highest accuracy rate of any aircraft, destroying hundreds of tanks and hardened targets. B-52 Stratofortress. The Buff conducted massive carpet bombing raids on Iraqi positions. B-52s dropped thousands of tons of bombs, devastating Republican Guard divisions. The psychological effect was immense. Surviving the B-52 raids broke Iraqi morale. AV-8B Harrier II. Marine Harriers operated from forward bases and ships, providing close air support. The VTOL capability allowed operations from austere locations. Harriers flew thousands of sorties, supporting marine ground operations. O-6E Intruder, Navy and Marine. A-6s conducted all-weather strikes deep into Iraq. The Intruder's sophisticated navigation and targeting systems allowed precision attacks in conditions that grounded other aircraft. A-6s were workhorses of carrier air wings. EA-6B Prowler, the electronic warfare aircraft, jammed Iraqi radars and communications. Prowlers created electronic corridors, allowing strikes into heavily defended areas. Iraqi air defense networks were crippled by Prowler jamming. E-3 Sentry AWACS. Airborne early warning aircraft controlled the air war, directing fighters and monitoring Iraqi aircraft. AWACS crews managed thousands of sorties, ensuring coalition aircraft didn't conflict. No Iraqi aircraft surprised coalition forces with AWACS overhead. E-8 Joint Stars. The new battlefield surveillance aircraft tracked Iraqi ground movements in real time. Joint Stars detected Iraqi armor moving and directed strikes before they reached objectives. The system proved invaluable despite being developmental. KC-135/KC-10 tankers. Thousands of refueling sorties enabled the air campaign. Tankers allowed strikes from distant bases and extended combat patrols. Without aerial refueling, Desert Storm's air operations would have been impossible. AC-130. Spectre. Gunships devastated Iraqi positions at night, their sensors and guns obliterating vehicles and troops. AC-130s hunted Scuds and supported special operations. One was shot down by a SAM. The only AC-130 lost to enemy fire. Tornado GR.1/IDS. British, Saudi, and Italian Tornadoes conducted low-level strikes on Iraqi airfields and infrastructure. The missions were extremely dangerous. Several Tornadoes were shot down by AAA and SAMs. Tornado crews showed incredible courage, attacking at 200 feet. Jaguar GR.1. British Jaguars conducted strikes and reconnaissance over Kuwait and Iraq. The light attack aircraft performed well, despite being outclassed by newer types. Jaguar pilots proved skill could offset technological limitations. Mirage F-1. French Mirages conducted strikes supporting Daguet Division operations. Some Qatari Mirages also participated. The F-1 was older, but French pilots used it effectively in their sector. Mirage 2000. French Mirage 2000s provided air superiority and conducted strikes. The The Delta Wing fighter's agility and radar made it capable against any Iraqi aircraft. French Mirages achieved air dominance in their operating area. CF-18 Hornet. Canadian CF-18s flew combat air patrols and conducted strikes. Canadian pilots contributed significantly to coalition air operations, proving their capabilities against Iraqi forces. Coalition support and utility aircraft. C-130 Hercules. Thousands of sorties delivered supplies, troops, and equipment. C-130s operated into forward airstrips, supplying advancing forces. Multiple nations contributed Hercules aircraft to the massive airlift effort. C-141 Starlifter. Strategic airlifters transported troops and cargo from the U.S. to Saudi Arabia. The airlift of forces to the Gulf was one of history's largest, with C-141s flying constantly for months. C-5 Galaxy. The massive transport carried tanks, helicopters, and heavy equipment. C-5s were critical to deploying armored divisions rapidly. Without strategic airlift, Desert Storm would have taken months longer to prepare. CH-47 Chinook. Heavy-lift helicopters moved artillery, supplies, and troops. Chinooks supported rapid advances, keeping fast-moving units supplied. Their lifting capacity was critical to maintaining operational tempo. UH-60 Black Hawk. Utility helicopters conducted assault, medevac, and logistics missions. Black Hawks inserted troops, evacuated wounded, and moved commanders. They were ubiquitous in the ground war. CH-53 Sea Stallion. Marine heavy-lift helicopters moved equipment and supported amphibious operations. CH-53s were essential to Marine Corps logistics, moving supplies from ships to forward positions. UH-1 Huey. Still serving with Marines and some allies, Hueys conducted utility missions throughout the campaign. The Vietnam-era workhorse proved useful for command and liaison duties. EH-60 Quick Fix Electronic Warfare. Black Hawks jammed Iraqi communications, disrupting command and control. Quick Fix helicopters operated near the front, directly supporting ground forces. Coalition ground vehicles. CHEM-MWV. The Humvee replaced jeeps, serving in countless roles. Armed with Tau missiles, they became tank killers. Equipped with machine guns, they provided mobile firepower. CHEM-MWVs were everywhere, from reconnaissance to ambulances to command vehicles. M998 HMVWV Tau. Tow-equipped Humvees destroyed Iraqi armor from long range. Light and mobile, they exploited Iraqi weaknesses and achieved significant kills. The combination of mobility and firepower proved deadly. M35 Truck. The 2.5-ton Deuce and a Half transported supplies throughout the theater. Thousands kept coalition forces supplied during rapid advances. These unglamorous trucks were essential to success. HEMT. Heavy expanded mobility. Tactical trucks transported fuel, ammunition, and supplies. The 8x8 trucks could operate cross-country, supplying units wherever they went. HEMT tankers kept armored formations fueled during the advance. M939 5-ton truck. Medium trucks transported troops and cargo throughout the campaign. The 6x6 trucks were reliable workhorses, moving supplies from ports to forward units. M88 Recovery Vehicle. Tank recovery vehicles retrieved disabled tanks and vehicles. M88s operated constantly, recovering battle-damaged equipment and bringing it back to repair facilities. Without recovery capability, disabled tanks would have been abandoned. M9AC Armored Combat. Earth movers cleared obstacles and prepared positions. Engineers used ACs to breach Iraqi defenses and create lanes through minefields. The heavily armored vehicles could work under fire. AAVP-7. Marine amphibious assault vehicles conducted operations in Kuwait. While designed for beach assaults, AAVs operated inland, transporting Marines and engaging Iraqi forces with their 40mm cannon and machine gun. M1070 HETs. Heavy equipment transporters moved tanks long distances, saving track wear. Moving armored divisions hundreds of miles required thousands of transporter sorties. Tank transporters were critical to operational mobility. Iraqi Tanks. T-72. Iraq's most modern tank couldn't compete with coalition armor. T-72s engaged Abrams at close range and failed to penetrate, while return fire destroyed them instantly. The technological gap was insurmountable. Hundreds were destroyed, many abandoned by crews who realized they couldn't win. T-62. Older Soviet tanks that were even more outmatched. T-62s lacked modern fire control, and their 115mm guns couldn't penetrate coalition armor. They were death traps for Iraqi crews, obliterated at ranges where they couldn't return fire. T-55/Type 59. Ancient by 1991 standards, these tanks were massacred when encountered. Some were so old they lacked even basic fire control. Iraqi forces equipped with T-55s stood no chance, and most were destroyed or abandoned. T-54. Even older Soviet tanks still in Iraqi service. These were obsolete in World War II standards, used only because Iraq lacked enough modern equipment. They were destroyed easily by any coalition weapon that engaged them. Iraqi infantry fighting vehicles and APCs. BMP-1. Soviet IFVs that were completely outclassed. Bradley and Warrior crews destroyed BMPs at long range with 25mm and 30mm cannons. The BMP's 73mm gun and AT-3 missiles couldn't penetrate coalition armor effectively. BMP-2. Slightly better than BMP-1 with a 30mm cannon, but still inferior. BMP-2s were destroyed in large numbers, their crews often abandoning them rather than fighting hopeless battles against superior enemies. MTLB, lightly armored personnel carriers used for transport and command. MTLBs were vulnerable to everything and provided minimal protection. Many were destroyed or captured intact when crews fled. BTR 60/70/80 wheeled armored personnel carriers that were death traps when engaged. Coalition forces destroyed hundreds. Their thin armor penetrated easily by heavy machine guns, much less cannons and missiles. Iraqi Artillery. 2 S-1 Gvozdika, Soviet 122mm self-propelled howitzers provided Iraqi fire support. Coalition counter-battery fire and MLRS strikes destroyed most before they could significantly impact operations. The few that fired were quickly silenced. 2 S-3 Akatsiya. The 152mm Soviet self-propelled howitzers were more capable, but still couldn't survive coalition counter-battery. Iraqi artillery was suppressed quickly, unable to support ground forces effectively. D-30, howitzer. Towed 122mm howitzers that were destroyed in massive numbers. Coalition airstrikes and artillery obliterated Iraqi gun positions. The D-30s couldn't displace fast enough to avoid destruction. D-20, howitzer. Towed 152mm guns that suffered the same fate as D-30s. Coalition fires destroyed Iraqi artillery before it could effectively support defending forces. M46, field gun. Old Soviet 130mm towed guns, many destroyed by airstrikes before the ground war began. Those surviving were silenced quickly by counter-battery fire. BM-21, Grad. Multiple rocket launchers that fired on coalition positions, but were rapidly destroyed. MLRS counter-battery fire obliterated Grad batteries within minutes of firing. Iraqi Aircraft. MiG-29, fulcrum. Iraq's most modern fighters were hunted mercilessly. Several MiG-29s were shot down, attempting to engage coalition aircraft. The fulcrum was capable, but Iraqi pilots were outmatched by training and technology. Many fled to Iran rather than fight. MiG-25 Foxbat. High-speed interceptors that occasionally attempted intercepts, but were shot down when engaged. Some conducted high-speed reconnaissance, but avoided combat. The Foxbat's speed wasn't enough against AWACS-directed F-15s. MiG-23 Flogger. Older Soviet fighters that were slaughtered when they flew. Iraqi MiG-23s achieved nothing and were destroyed easily. Most were destroyed on the ground by coalition strikes. MiG-21 Fishbed. Ancient by 1991, these fighters were obliterated if they took off. Coalition pilots shot down MiG-21s effortlessly. Most never left the ground, destroyed in shelters by precision weapons. Mirage F-1. French-built fighters operated by Iraq conducted some strikes, but were hunted by coalition fighters. Several were shot down, others fled to Iran. The Mirage F-1 was capable, but Iraqi tactics and training negated any advantages. Su-25 Frogfoot. Ground attack aircraft that attempted close air support, but were vulnerable to coalition fighters and SAMs. Several were shot down, and the rest were grounded after heavy losses. Su-22 Fitter. Strike aircraft that achieved little before being destroyed or fleeing. Su-22s couldn't survive in contested airspace and were relegated to fleeing to Iran or hiding. Su-7 Fitteray. Obsolete ground attack aircraft that were destroyed on airfields. Any that attempted missions were shot down easily. The Su-7 was hopeless against modern air defenses. Iraqi Helicopters. Satsmi-24. Ghiad. Attack helicopters that were hunted by coalition fighters and avoided combat. A few attempted attacks on coalition forces but were destroyed. Most Hinds were destroyed on the ground or abandoned. Mi-8 transport helicopters used to move troops and supplies. Coalition aircraft destroyed many. Others were abandoned. Some attempted to flee to Iran and were shot down. Gazelle. French helicopters used for reconnaissance and light attack, but were ineffective against coalition forces. Most were destroyed or abandoned during the ground war. Bo-105. Light helicopters used by Iraq for various roles. These were vulnerable and achieved nothing significant. Most destroyed or captured. From M1 Abrams tanks achieving kill ratios of 100-1 to A-10s massacring Iraqi columns, Desert Storm showcased modern warfare's evolution, where technological superiority and superior training created a one-sided conflict that redefined how wars are fought.